Welcome to InflexionPoint Podcast, where we cultivate change from the inside out as we ponder the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? We stand on the belief that dismantling racism goes beyond laws and legislation or politics and economics. Here, anti-racism activation is presented as an inside job where personal transformation and accountability impact social change. So take a seat at the anti-racism activation table with Inflection Point Podcast.
Well, hello to our audience, and thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of Inflection Point Podcast, where we are dedicated to anti-racism activation and the art of listening and authentic conversation, engagement, action, and accountability. I am your host, Anita Russell, and here's a quick hello from our co-hosts, Mavis Bauman and Gail Hunter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mavis Bauman.
Hi, I'm Gail Hunter, and welcome.
Excellent, excellent. So if you have been following us, you know that our theme for 2025 has been community engagement and the grassroots of change. So throughout the year, we have explored stories and strategies and successes of community-driven movements that are making a difference. So episodes have focused on both theory and practice, allowing our audience to gain insights that they can apply in their real world community engagement efforts. So in the previous episode, we broke down how equitable engagement goes far beyond good intentions. That equitable engagement is gaining traction in fields ranging from community development and education to corporate leadership and public policy, and centering the conversation around justice, listening, sovereignty, shared power, reclaims the deep roots of this work and highlights what true equity demands. And so in this episode, we actually will provide a number of concrete examples of equity in community engagement from multiple organizations. So we're going to kind of split this conversation off a bit, and Mavis, Gail, and I will each talk about a specific example of an equitable engagement program that is currently in process. So let's just talk about equitable engagement a little bit. So if you're new and you didn't hear the previous conversation, we'll give you a little bit of background information. So equitable engagement is a justice-rooted practice. It's not just a participatory one. And so it involves it uses skill-based values, I should say, using a power approach to involving individuals and communities and decision-making process and policy development, program design, and all of those things that come under the umbrella of engagement. It also centers those voices. It centers the needs. It centers the lived experience of those who have been historically marginalized or excluded from the dominant culture. So that includes the Black community, the Indigenous community, other people of color, low-income community, immigrants, youth, people with disabilities, LGBTQI individuals, and others whose perspectives are often overlooked. And what I'm really talking about is those individuals that are not just Black and white. So this is not just Black and white. It's really talking about and focusing on what those central pillars are in this country and how so many people are marginalized by those central systemic pillars. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about here. It's also about redistributing power, building trust, and creating co-ownership of outcomes. And equity is not a zero-sum game. I can't even imagine how many times I've actually had to say that in my life, that equity is not a zero-sum game. Diversity, equity, inclusion is not a zero-sum game. So if you know what zero-sum means, it means if I gain, somebody else has to lose. So the balance is always zero. That's not what this is about at all. And so if you think about some of the characteristics of equitable engagement, we're talking lived experiences. We're talking power sharing and co-design, culturally responsive and context specific methodology and things that reflect culture and language and different values and things of that nature that are not necessarily specific to the dominant culture. And it's outreach that is sort of occurring in these trusted spaces and channels and things of that nature. That's kind of the vision that I have. When I think about my own personal vision of, number one, how do I want to walk through the world? And number two, as I'm walking through the world, what do I want to encounter? These are some of the things that I want to encounter. Things like accessibility and inclusion, accountability, evaluation, structural awareness, all of those types of things that really encompass an individual's outlook, if you will. When you are looking out through your lens, when you're looking out through your eyes and through your experiences, what are you doing? How are you interacting? How are you engaging? And so that's what a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about is really about: self-examination, critical self-reflection. Because if we don't take a look at ourselves and really have a good handle on who we are in terms of our own identity, it's very easy to succumb to those things that are being piled on top of us and giving us this sense that there's no way out. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that. And so hence the journey that we have been on is about that community engagement. It's been about cooperative economics. Like, how do we come together and work together as human beings for the betterment of human beings? And so part of what we sort of have been talking about is listening. Not just listening so that you can figure out what are you going to say in response to what someone else is saying, but listening so that you have a sense of understanding, or maybe even a sense of connection to what somebody else might be saying. It's storytelling. It's centering the margins. It's talking about those lived experiences. And I know if you're have any level of awareness, none of this is new. You've heard these terms before: cultural responsiveness, context specific. All of these things are so incredibly important, and particularly exploring listening as this justice practice and the power of storytelling. I'm going to give you an example. And as we move through the rest of our time together, Mavis and Gail are going to be giving examples as well of organizations that are really involved in doing this work. And so I'm going to share with you an experience that I have very recently as a facilitator. So I am connected to a very dynamic organization in Pittsburgh called the Greenwood Plan. And the Greenwood Plan kind of consists of multiple components. And one of them is this whole idea of elevating and recognizing Black entrepreneurs, meeting their needs. What do they need? How do they survive? What are they encountering? And all of that. And so there's the Greenwood Plan, and then there's Emerald City. Emerald City is a co-working space that houses so many different examples of Black-owned business owners. And I might say not exclusively Black-owned business owners, but primarily Black-owned business owners and entrepreneurs. It is one of the most dynamic environments that I've ever had the privilege of being a part of. And then there's an organization called Boom Concepts. And so all of these organizations decided to come together, and they had me come in to facilitate an artist engagement workshop. And it was extremely powerful. And so all the things that we have been talking about from this community engagement perspective, working cooperatively, showed up. And it was about 3 hours, 3.5 hours that we were together. And essentially, it was a community artist think tank that was designed to understand and unravel what are some of those navigational challenges that artists, and artists is a very broad term. And so we had all kinds of people. We had about 20 people. I believe there were 20 participants. They were all coming from different walks of life, from artistry, costume design, mental health, all of these different facets of individuals that came together to share in this conversation. And so what we ended up doing was having a very dynamic conversation. And it kind of focused on what is the landscape for Black artists or anybody who defines himself within those terms. What does it look like for individuals in the city of Pittsburgh? So the group of people that were in were relatively diverse, although most of them were Black individuals. But within the context of that Black individuality, there was diversity. There were individuals who had been born and raised their whole entire life, I should say, in the city of Pittsburgh. But then there were other individuals who migrated here from somewhere else, from another city. And then there was somebody such as myself who was born and raised in Pittsburgh. I left the city of Pittsburgh for about 30 years, and then I came back. And so all of that represents all of these different experiences that people are able to have when they're walking into a community space like the one that we created. And the whole entire purpose was to identify what are those key areas of support and need that those types of needs that need to be there in order for an artist to thrive independently and collectively. So it's not just about me as a sole entrepreneur, but it's also about me as part of a collective group. And that's so much of what we've been talking about in the past year, is doing things collectively and how powerful that actually is. So I'm going to kind of just speed through a couple of things, because I want to make sure that Mavis and Gail have some opportunity to really, really talk about the two examples that they are presenting. And so I already mentioned that this think tank was designed to empower Black artists by identifying those particular areas in need of support, et cetera. But it was also about gathering that equitable data. And what are their actual lived experiences? And so because I was the one who designed the workshop itself, I brought in a lot of visualization, certain cues. When you hear this word, what does it say to you? When you see this type of experience, what does that say to you? So it was a lot of open communication, exchanging of ideas, but everyone was afforded the opportunity to speak from the perspective of themselves, their lived experiences. And as I mentioned, it was very, very diverse in terms of where people were coming from. But getting that equitable data and describing those lived experiences, and the whole entire point is to get to the point where we can create an arts organizing workbook. So the idea is that we're taking all of this data and all of these experiences that we're collecting to be able to create this art organizing guidebook that can be of help to individuals, maybe somebody new coming into the city of Pittsburgh and just coming into the that creative community. Where do I go? How do I get started? Who are the people that I should be talking to? And also artist-led programming. What are some of the programs that we can be developing, thinking about stuff that we can develop so that we can flourish even more so in that artist community? And then establishing those community agreements. So when people are coming together, especially when they're coming together cooperatively and in this idea of engagement, it's very important to establish what are those community agreements, that we establish those up front. What are those organizational things that we can refer to across programs? What are those values that we hold for that cooperative space, right? And then one of the goals was to pilot a foundational session so that we have something to piggyback off of for additional sessions as more and more people artists specifically, are coming into this space, we want to be able to capture as much information, as much data, as much experience as we possibly can. And the whole entire point is for us to constantly improve on what we have. And as we gather these data, new individuals are coming in. We have a whole entire resource that we can share with people. To me, that's what community engagement and working cooperatively is all about. So I wanted to share that as one of my own personal examples of being able to be in a space where I had the opportunity to facilitate something such as that. So now I'd like to pass the baton over to Gail. And Gail is going to lead us in a discussion on health equity through ambassadors and a family engagement model. Mavis and Gail actually both are going to focus on that, but they'll each have an individual component. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Gail, and she's going to talk about this health equity initiative that trains residents as story ambassadors.
All right. So the article that I was reading about was called Community Health Speaks. It's actually a collaborative initiative that united the University at Buffalo, the faculty, the community centers, the nonprofits, the clergy, and the local residents. And their mission was to really try to close the gap between science and historically marginalized communities by promoting inclusivity, equity, and shared knowledge. And they did this through a lens of anti-racism, equity, and community sovereignty. What they did was basically to raise awareness. They highlighted health disparities and the role of research in driving the change that needed to happen. They also focused on empowering communities, giving the residents a voice in the research and the strategies and the outcomes. They were focusing on building connections and creating spaces for the dialogue and open forums to be able to discuss and communicate with one another between not just the members of the community, but between the scientists, the leaders, and the community members. And they probably were trying to promote equity and advocate for a really very healthy and more informed, fair Buffalo, from what they were saying. So they really were committed to transforming this way of health and science and how it intersects. And they created this program called their Health Equity Ambassador Program. And they invited various trusted community leaders to serve as the catalyst for the change. And those ambassadors, they didn't just share information, they amplified the community voices and they challenged the systemic inequities. And they really tried to help reclaim power over health narratives. They believed that the true community engagement meant that co-creation, not just outreach, was so crucial. And so their work centered on building trust, sharing knowledge, and making space for lived experience in the health research and policies with the community members, instead of being separated and isolated in a university setting. So their whole approach was very much rooted in collaboration. They included community centers, clergy, scholars, and the residents. And so this wasn't just about inclusion. They really emphasized this. It was really about sovereignty, and we've been talking about sovereignty. So it's about the communities that have real ownership over their own health decisions, their data, and their futures. So that Health Speaks is more than just a program. It really has been a movement towards a more just, informed, and liberated future for everyone. Their key initiatives have been the community workshops that they provided that allowed them to access residents and so forth. They were able to access education on various health topics, from genetics to health disparities. They focus on health equity as a key initiative. They advocate for universal access to quality healthcare. They did a genome education that simplified genetics and empowers individuals to make informed health decisions by really looking at their own genetics and their own history and really understanding how that could be affecting them in the present time. They also addressed environmental and social justice and how the environment and social issues really do affect their health outcomes. And they partnered and collaborated and built very strong networks in order to advance the shared goals in the health and wellness. So their overall goal is to create a healthier, more informed, and equitable future for all the residents of Buffalo through this collective action and community-driven change. Their call to action, and I'm going to read this because it really It's really good. If you believe in a future where communities have the power to define their own health, where equity is the norm, not the exception, and where anti-racism is more than a value, but a practice, we invite you to join us. Use your voice as an ambassador, as a health equity ambassador. Use your voice, your experience, and your leadership to push back against systemic injustice and help build a healthier, more sovereign future for all. And they invite you to visit Community Health Speaks, which is their website, if you want to get more involved or to bring these own conversations to your own communities. Because change doesn't just happen to us, it happens with us. And so they really are being so proactive, and I love their whole concept of collaborating with everyone in the community and bringing everybody down at the same level where they can all have a need and they all have resources that they can access and they all have a voice, right? The other organization I was going to talk about was the nonprofit that I've been running for the last 11, 12, 15 years. OMA Pittsburgh was based on a vision and a commitment to provide for all individuals a holistic approach to facilitate wellness of self, family, and the community. And it was designed to integrate a variety of different healing and therapeutic modalities in the areas of wellness, fitness, health, therapeutic, and educational programs from more of a holistic standpoint and perspective. So we wanted to really provide access to information that most people, we believe, in the communities that we were looking at would not have access to, or wouldn't even have an awareness about. As a practitioner and a holistic practitioner, I really believe that there's so much more than just the medical or the allopathic form of medicine that we all can benefit from learning and utilizing and integrating. And people that just didn't have access to it, this would at least provide an education and programs and experiences for them, and a community that they could come to, which is what's happened. We've had a youth program. We've done a lot of work with trauma-informed training in the community. We've had a program that's called You Are Not Alone, which is for trauma survivors. We provide these lectures and workshops in various aspects under the mind, body, spirit overall categories, and to try to provide a variety of different experiences for people. And we most of all have the ability to just pay whatever you can afford, even if it's only 50 cents or $1, that we really look at offering more donations from the heart. And if we do have a workshop or a weekend retreat and somebody needs a scholarship, we do offer that too. So we try to make it very affordable for anybody who really is interested in coming. It's been an incredible experience for me to be a part of that. And there's so much more that I can envision doing. But I'm certainly grateful that I've been able to participate at this level and what I have been able to contribute. Like some of the examples of the workshops, we have one this Thursday. It's called How We Die Now, Navigating the New Normal. And it's a panel discussion by various people that are in the Pittsburgh Bereavement Network and the community death care. So there's some death doulas, there's some people that work with hospice and so forth. We have a support circle that for anybody who believes that they're empathic. We're having somebody presenting in September that's going to do sessions on how to really do breath work that's going to help you reduce stress, not just relax your body, but relax your whole being. So there are a variety of different subjects and lectures that we do offer. And if you're interested, please go to the website. It's omapittsburgh.org. So I thank you. I appreciate that. But so this has been an exciting journey for me, but also to see and learn about all these different programs that are out there and that are really working with communities, which I believe is the goal.
I've been the beneficiary of a few of Gil's sessions and courses, and there's so much heart and love in the room that if you're interested in any of these, avenues, please do check out her website. It's just a great opportunity and very affordable, as she says.
Mm-hmm.
It's very helpful.
I think one of the things that I'm hoping as people are listening to our podcast and as we're talking about having all of these conversations, that one of the messages I want to make sure is clear to our audience is that we don't just talk about this stuff. We don't just talk about community engagement or family engagement or working cooperatively. We actually embody that. We do that work. And when I look at the three of us, I would say probably between the three of us, we have like 100 years worth of experience in doing this type of work. And I can honestly say that my first introduction to community engagement was when I was 14 years old. If you're my age, you remember back in the day when you turned 14, you could get a job. It was the Manpower program. Everybody that I knew in my community would go and apply to get a job as soon as we turned 14 years old. And so when I think about the jobs that we had, we did things right in our community. I did work with senior citizens. As a matter of fact, it was a senior citizen, one of the homes that we went to, she literally taught me how to iron, how to iron, right? And that was just a part of my little summer job. But I was learning and I was appreciating. I had the opportunity to work with children. I worked with seniors, as I just mentioned. I had such a variety of jobs that I had from the age of 14 to about the age of 18. So that when I was ready to go to college, I had already had some of this community engagement. I was raised by an activist mother. Like a lot of that stuff was already indwelling in me. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that I hope that that is something that our audience is seeing, that we're just not just talking the talk. We actually walk this stuff that we're talking about. And we have about 2 minutes before we go to break. Gail, Mavis, any comments before we take our break and continue?
I think the most important thing I want to make sure people hear is that, I mean, when I started this, I didn't have the background or experience, and certainly I'm a great visionist, and my original vision, I didn't have money to complete it, but that didn't stop me from trying to do something, right? Just whatever step, whatever anybody can offer is a contribution that's significant, and don't underestimate that in whatever way you can contribute.
Really, I was just going to comment quickly on your part, Anita, about the artists. Quite simply, this whole philosophy involves not top down. And I'm thinking, how would a room full of artists respond to top down directives? It's antithetical to the way they think.
Right.
So having that opportunity to raise their voice would be, so empowering and a creative exercise. So it's just that simple, right? That was it.
Yes.
Absolutely. So again, I just hope this message is really getting across to our audience of who we are as individuals. So we're going to take a short break and we'll come back. And when we come back, we're going to pass the baton over to Mavis, and she's going to share some information with us about Australian education and a family engagement model. So the other thing that I want to point out is that our conversation, we don't restrict ourselves just to what's happening in the United States. We look at these things through a global lens. So we're going to take a break, come back, and we'll have Mavis on the podium, if you will. So welcome back to Inflection Point Podcast as we continue our 2025 journey into community engagement and the grassroots of change. In this episode, we continue our exploration of the heart of engagement for equity, justice, listening, and collective power. And at this point, I'm going to pass the mic over to Mavis, and she's going to lead us into another engaging conversation.
Thanks, Anita. I am going to talk about yarning circles in Australia. I'm going to give you a little vignette first, and then I'll explain yarning circles a little bit. There was a school in Greater Western Sydney, Australia, that's cohort is about 35% Indigenous people. The students in the school were having some problems with certain social behaviors and other school problems. So they took the concept of the yarning circle themselves to address their problems. So, for example, when the students at Lethbridge Park Public School noticed that their peers are acting out on playground, they asked for a meditation club. So they took the power in their own hands, didn't just complain, but came collectively up with a solution for what was bothering them. So the school set up a meditation place. Now, 3 days a week, children spend their lunch break lying in a classroom seeking tranquility. I can only imagine how different that is from just verbal punishment for the people who are bothering. The quiet ones have been separated. They get to do what they need to do, and there's peace on earth there. They also brought up an issue about a graffiti problem within the restrooms. So they discussed and came up with a solution and requested the permission to cover the walls in the bathroom themselves with their own art and positive messages. And I love the idea of young people coming up with answers for things that are bothering them, rather than laying them at the feet of a leader. I had a boss one time. It just made me think of, I brought her my issues one day, and she said, "Okay, now go away and come back with a solution." So these yarning circles are really a great facility for doing that in a very egalitarian way. The school's principal says, "Our school is centered around the needs of our kids. We know that because we ask them and we empower them." He says, "We want our kids to believe they can make positive changes in school and then take that into their own lives. Their voice matters." I think that's one of the major themes here in this whole community engagement idea, that your voice does matter. I was thinking earlier when Anita was talking that, what was most important to me. And I thought, well, I want to be heard. I do have my own ideas, and to be in that collective environment would give me the chance to speak and to be heard. So they were finding out that yarning circles proved better, that they were more supportive to a good education than their national testing results, NAPLAN results, National Assessment Program for Literacy and Numeracy. So let me just give you a little bit of a history about yarning circles. I think this is so cool. They are thousands of years old. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people belong to the oldest living civilization on the planet, with a rich and diverse culture and system of beliefs centered on what? Respect, peacefulness, and truth. Imagine if we kept those top of mind. Looking at history and research through an Aboriginal rights timeline paints a stark picture of the countless ways First Nations people have had their rights, autonomy, and culture repressed. So they still use this tool themselves to bring their voices forward. A yarning circle is one of the key elements of Indigenous culture, where decisions are made collaboratively and through inclusive dialogue of participants, rather than having one person in the position of power. This theme keeps coming up, right? One person in a position of power who makes autonomous decisions that may affect others. Just another little aside that came to mind while Gail was speaking. I read something not long ago about the idea of friction in trying to get something done, that when you have either steps or hurdles or bureaucracy or something in getting something done, those things create friction. You can't know about those friction points unless you speak to the people who are involved in those processes. So I think that the yarning circle is one example of a way to bring those ideas forward. So instead, the yarning circles invite everybody to participate on an equal standing, learn as a collective of people with different ideas and experiences, and create respectful and appreciative relationships. You know, that's the other level that happens here. When you hear about the lived experience of other people, you make a friend, or certainly you learn something, but the relationship strengthens the conversation. This helps foster a spirit of accountability and honesty, and creates a safe place where participants are listened to and heard. The yarning circles have been used across Indigenous communities for thousands of years. You know, it's funny to think about that sort of facility being available. And it's not rocket science, right? It's just the way our culture, at least in the Western world, has developed, and it's very much hierarchical. And someone comes in who we believe has the experience and ultimate knowledge that can tell us what needs to be done. And then the friction starts, right? People are not heard as much as they need to be. And the leaders, I've had leaders say to me, what is wrong? What do we need to communicate to our employees so that they cooperate with this particular vision? So yarning circles can certainly help within corporate environments as well. Something else about the First Nations, the four cornerstones of the First Nations who are accredited with these yarning circle concepts are family, land, law, and language. So the way people interact with the world around them and consider their relationships with each other, the natural landscape, and their communities differs considerably from the Western convention. So, for example, the land they live on is not a benign object or something a person can truly own. The Aboriginal culture sees the land as a living thing that provides shelter and sustenance, where each person is responsible for caring for and nurturing the land as custodian for the next generation. So I can just hear how this tool, the yarning circles, gets passed down generation to generation. And I'm imagining that respect gets passed down with it. You know, I've thought a lot more recently in past few years about how we think of our ownership of our own property. This is my property. You can't step on it. You can't use it. You can't touch it. And do we really own anything in that sense, you know? If we got out of that mindset a little bit, like my neighbor lets me cut through their backyard so that I don't have to go through traffic. It doesn't hurt anything. We can get to solutions like that through engaging with our neighbors, through engaging in community. It says the contrasts are connected to the yarning circle, where societal groups are based on kinship systems, with a strong focus on ceremony, custom, tradition, and learning about the environment. Many of the long-standing customs and beliefs within the culture of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people remain an integral part of modern life. So that kind of brings us back to this high school that said, I know what we're going to do. The kids, you know, saying, I know what we're going to do. We're going to have a circle, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to collect our ideas and come together. There's also power in numbers too, you know, when there are many people who come together with one mind. How it would be much more difficult for a teacher to say, no, we just don't do that here. We just don't do that here. So that's the yarning circle. And I've always wondered where the term yarn came from. And, you know, it, you know, of course, it has a double meaning, but it is to tell a story. It means to tell us. Yeah. So we are talking about sharing stories within the community environment. And I see that as a very powerful example. So any reactions or questions, ladies?
Yeah, everything you said was just so on point. And I think people in our age group, we're young, I mean, we're older, we're mature, and all of that. But I think that older maturity and the age that we are has given us so much depth in terms of how we've decided we want to walk through
Yes.
the
Yeah.
world. How do we want to connect with other people? And I know for a fact that there are other people out there that are just like us and all
Right.
of that.
Right.
But I think one of the things that kind of popped into my mind when you were talking is this idea of thinking back. When you think about the Sankofa principle, right? Thinking back and
Mhm.
thinking forward. And the thing that popped
Mhm.
into my mind, like the way we were talking about equity is not a zero-sum game. Thinking back and thinking forward is not zero-sum either,
Mm-mm.
right? You have to use what we have learned from one generation, from one eon, from one century to another, because all of those things collectively and globally are how we got to where we are today. Right. And then being able to think forward. But I feel like so much of where we are now is just kind of focusing on the forward. When I think about capitalism as an example, right? We have to increase our profits over last year, right? We have to get more innovative. We have to get this. We have to get more customers. We have to get all of this stuff that we have to get because we're constantly trying to get through this target that constantly
Growth.
is moving.
Get
Mhm.
more.
Just
Right.
through
And so
growth.
that whole idea of thinking like it just has to be about innovation and it has to be about progress. No, sometimes it needs to go back to, it means you need to go back to your roots,
Mhm.
Well,
right?
especially when we look at the structures that are so stuck in our society, the systems that are so ingrained, we do need to back up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
what we've learned, or we're going to keep repeating these same problems.
Absolutely.
Well, we have been.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I also think the delivery of what is going on and the communication is so crucial. And what I'm hearing from all these different examples is the use of being able to have respect and honesty, and all that will build that trust among the people that are trying to work on collaboration, whether it's in a yarning circle or it's in an organization that's doing this with a community, whatever the specifics are. But without those necessary core values, nothing's going to happen that's positive. And that's whether you're working with adolescents or you're working with adults, right?
Absolutely.
The success of the adolescents and what you described was really because of that, right? They had this respect for themselves and for each other, both. And they were able to listen. They were able to hear what the other people were saying. They were able to value that and take all that into consideration, which is what collaboration is, right? Is valuing everyone's viewpoint, because we all have something to say, but it's using respect and being honest and direct in a respectful way. I think that's
And we all have biases. So
Right.
if we go through this process of knowing who you are,
Mhm.
Right.
engaging in cultural transformation, then you can learn to overcome those biases or step aside from them or not let them drive you. I keep thinking of this woman who spoke up to me in this little community I participate in near New York City, a soup kitchen. One day, I might have mentioned this in an earlier podcast, but I was wondering how the people who didn't have food had cell phones. And one of the women in the soup kitchen heard me commenting on that, and she took me aside and she said, "Mavis, you don't know." And because we had relationship, she could tell me something that I didn't know. That maybe those were borrowed phones. Maybe they were burner phones with a set number of minutes on them. And I just so appreciated that. I will never forget it. And I think about how we can affect each other in community, even individually and in the groups that we're talking about. Powerful.
Absolutely. And I think just kind of piggybacking off of what you were just talking about, it's really important for us as individuals to recognize that person sitting across from you on the subway is a wholly different person from you.
Mhm.
Even though you could look at them and you could make judgments in your mind
Yes.
based on how are they dressed, or are they
Types.
speaking English, or how many kids do they have? Like all of these things, it makes it so easy for us to look at a person on the surface, because that's literally what we're doing. Looking at them on the surface and then making an assessment, drawing an assessment based on that, right?
Which is more of a judgment, right? It's not even a
Yeah,
judgment.
absolutely.
It's actually more of a judgment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was actually sharing with somebody earlier today about, and I've shared this here, when we went to South Africa, Mavis, for the very first time back in 2008. And the preparation that I went through in order to rid myself of any type of judgment that I could have in going into someone else's community, their country, their community, their language, their customs, their culture. Who am I to step out of the United States and then step into South Africa and bring judgment with me? Who am I to do that? And so that's where that challenge comes in, of really, really assessing yourself. Like, I would challenge anybody who is listening. The next time you walk down the street,
What are you thinking? Yeah.
what are you thinking when you
Mhm.
pass a Black person, when you pass a homeless person? What is in your
What
mind?
is your judgment, right? Are you judging?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would challenge you to
Right.
go even further. Keep a little logbook. I saw this person today, and this is the thought that I had in my mind as I passed them.
Mhm. Based on no
Because you
knowledge.
have to be willing to recognize
Mhm.
what's inside of you.
I have to be willing to be honest with yourself and really look in that mirror to listen to your own
Yeah.
self, right?
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
you open up the doors to so much, in my opinion, delight.
Yeah.
Open the doors to the variation in human beings and ideas and culture and food and entertainment and
Be
everything.
curious, right?
You get curious, and it's a whole new world. You know, that's how I felt when I went to South Africa. You know,
Yes,
and it's,
yes.
who
Yeah.
are you? This is so exciting to me, that you are willing to welcome me into your community
Oh,
and
absolutely.
teach me, really, you know, just by letting me be here. Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
and you know,
And I hear you. It was like a privilege.
mhm, mhm,
They were giving me the privilege of being able to walk into their space.
mhm. And they were so open and
Absolutely.
warm and generous, and you know, with very little in terms of, you know, our normal standards. But they
Right.
gave us their
Absolutely.
hearts, their time, and their attention, and we
Absolutely.
listened. Yeah.
And when you think about this whole idea of diversity, I was interviewed yesterday, again at Emerald City. There was some people that came in from Allegheny County and wanted to interview a few of the people that were in that space, and asking about how do I see diversity in terms of Allegheny County, and how do I see these things. And in that moment, what I began to realize is that the way I see diversity is not black and white.
Mhm.
The way I see diversity is literally through the lens of God's creation.
Mhm.
When I look at the different types of people that are on this planet, who am I to look down on somebody that lives in the rainforest versus somebody who can afford a $50 million wedding in Italy? Like, who am I to contrast those individuals to be able to say that this person is better
Mhm.
than that person?
Or
That's
that
what
seems
diversity
weird.
is for me.
You know, I've heard, you know, my friends and family say, that's weird. Well, what is weird? Just different. It's
Just different. Absolutely.
That's all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to say that, yeah, you're believing that the way you are is the only way, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's not accurate, because we all wouldn't be different if that wasn't what was intended.
There was
Yeah,
no
exactly.
one,
Was intended.
no one perfect
Exactly.
way to live. There are many
Right.
ways to live well, and
Well, if you look at all the species on this planet, every one is very diversified.
Mhm. Mhm. And
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet that each one of us, our time is almost up, each one of us can probably think back on that one incident that happened in your life that took you from this path to that path.
Well, sure.
Just in an experience.
Mhm.
Right.
That's what South Africa did to me. That's what Rwanda did for me.
Mhm.
And so I'm very grateful that that's who I am. So we literally are almost out of time. And I just wanted to run this by you, this whole idea that equitable engagement is important for sustainability, right? It is the cornerstone of effective, sustainable efforts. It ensures that all stakeholders, particularly those most affected by environmental and social challenges, have a voice in shaping solutions. That's including the role of inclusion, addressing power imbalances, impact and outcomes, learning, adaptation, collaboration, ethical dimensions, social justice, all of these things that are in the conversation today. And so, to our listeners, I would challenge you to think within the context of your own space and what you're doing. What is the most pressing barrier to equitable engagement in your community? Just kind of think about that. And I'd like to close us out. We literally have 2 minutes left. So I want to close us out with this closing message. And this is about making the world a better place, right? I know that sounds cliche and all of that, but that's really what this is about. I am a strong advocate for justice and equality. I am a leader in my community. I am constantly learning, unlearning, and growing. I choose to put the needs of the collective community above my own. I am kind and compassionate towards all beings. I am committed to make the world a more peaceful place. I am a responsible and trustworthy global citizen. I am a champion of diversity and embrace differences. I make space for all. And so finally, what I'd like to do is tell the audience you can join us on our private Facebook page. It's under Inflection Point Podcast. Share this episode with your colleagues, your community members, and all of that, and even start a dialogue. What would it look like to reimagine engagement as a form of justice in your space? So this is Inflection Point Podcast. Anita Russell, Mavis Bauman, and Gail Hunter. I hope that you will join us in our next episode. We are here every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time and 6 p.m. Eastern time. And I hope to see you there. And remember those engaging questions that we asked. Thank you for listening to Inflection Point Podcast, where our mantra is cultivating change from the inside out. The journey towards anti-racism and social change doesn't stop here. Truth, reconciliation, and healing come from ongoing, open, honest, and deliberate conversations. Continue to dive in and deconstruct your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs as we band together to manifest social change. Tune in to Inflection Point Podcast every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more conversations about how we can cultivate change from the inside out.